Okay, welcome everybody. Here we are, August 3rd, 2022. Today I'm joined by Daniel Thompson. And so I want to sort of go back a little bit and say where I first read this gentleman's name. So back in the early 90s, I read the Superslow manual, and that was authored by Ken Hutchins. I called Ken Hutchins because I had some questions. So I don't remember what they were now. I think this was about 1994. Ken invited me to join the Superslow Exercise Guild, which I did. And I believe I'd gone to read the Superslow Exercise Manual as a result of reading one of Ellington Darden's books, in which he mentioned Superslow. I joined the guild, and then as part of a member of the guild, as part of being a member of the guild, there was a newsletter called the Exercise Standard. And I remember that some of the articles in here were written by today's guest, Daniel Thompson. And interestingly, in a recent book by Ken Hutchins, who is Renaissance Exercise Volume 2, he starts the book with two of the articles from that newsletter that Daniel wrote some time ago. And it was about MedX, lumbar machine, cervical machine, and the testing procedures and pros and cons and things of that nature. And then somehow or other on my YouTube channel, I see something that's called Exercise Thoughts and
Discussions. Exercise thoughts and discussions, yeah.
Yeah, because Daniel's YouTube channel isn't named after himself. It's just called Exercise Thoughts and Discussions. So I started to listen to that. I was quite intrigued. So Daniel is a thinker, as were many people that belong to the guild. They came at exercise in a very cerebral fashion, looking at it. And Dan, I understand, has been away from exercise and whatnot for some time, and he's now coming back to it. So I thought his background, obviously some of the recent YouTube videos, he's giving a lot of thought into many things from back then and today. And I thought this would be really interesting. So Dan, what have I left out that you think listening folks here should know about you and that you would like them to know?
Let's see if I can do a quick history.
Or how you came to be part of the guild.
I from about 7 to 10, 11 years old, I did Taekwondo. From around 10, 12, somewhere 10, 11, 12 to 25, I did gymnastics. I mean, it was, gymnastics for me was a full-time endeavor, not a part-time. It was pretty much what you see in the Olympic things, where you wake up, you train, you go to school, you train, you eat dinner, do your homework, train. So that was my life, and I would do it again. Then I got into exercise after that. Very quickly when I got into the exercise, I got the hit information, mostly from the Advanced Nautilus bodybuilding book, Nautilus bodybuilding, the Nautilus, all the Darden stuff. And then the flow of information from that led me to Superslow, to Ken Hutchins. I actually moved to Florida with the intention of trying to get to work at MedX. Didn't work, mostly because they needed NDAs and I talk too much. I can't keep an NDA. I have turned down 2 jobs because I cannot do an NDA.
NDA is a non-disclosure agreement, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. I can't do it. It's just like, I know myself. I'll talk. If somebody gives me a cookie, I'll talk. So okay. So I had to turn down a couple of positions about that. There was, I got involved with the research at UF and through Gainesville Health and Fitness and Joe Cerulli, and got to be around a lot of key people at that time, and that was really exciting. Dr. Pollock, Dr. Graves at UF, Arthur at MedX, Joe Cerulli, and then eventually Ken Hutchins. And like I tell in my tribute to Ken, so to speak, I felt like the sorcerer's apprentice when I got to work with Ken. That was awesome. And then from there, I went to work with Doug Spratt I don't know if you know him or knew him.
I know
Buddy
of
coach.
him, yeah.
Yeah. You've heard the name. Yeah. He and I worked really closely for off and on for about 10 years, developing his ideas and our business ideas. And I kind of over time got not dissatisfied, but unenthused about exercise. And I don't want to say really about exercise, but more about American culture and Western culture not caring about exercise. We went from being a somewhat fit populace to really quickly unfit, really quickly obese, really quickly unhealthy. And I just got really discouraged that,
Disillusioned.
yeah, that the cultural effect, I was like, oh, screw this. My market is shrinking. I'm already a shrunken market because I'm a HIIT trainer. So I had these things and everybody was kind of telling me, oh, you're really good with computers. You should go into IT. And so I did that. I went back to school, got a degree in IT. And I worked at University of Central Florida Engineering for 11 years. And that was eye-opening. That was enlightening as far as a lot of things about exercise. They did nothing about exercise, but the things they worked on made me think about it.
Right.
The things I got to see, especially the procedures of research, were very, very interesting. Um, I miss that job a lot. It didn't pay much or anything, but I miss it a lot. Partially, if people may notice from other things, I'm a language learning enthusiast. I am not a polyglot. I am not fluent in all my fun languages. It is a hobby, and I pursue it like crazy. Some people watch TV, some will read books. I practice languages.
Right.
It's just a thing. And in engineering, I could walk down a hall, and in one walk, I could hear 15 languages. I counted it one day, 15 different languages. So I was like in gold. I was in heaven for me. So it was hard to leave there. But as far as exercise, for the last 10 years, I have really been doing something very simple that is what I call massive minimalist maintenance method. And basically, I would do 30 pull-ups one day, 30 squats the next day, and 30 push-ups the next day. Not all at the same time. I would do one or two at a time all throughout the day.
Right.
And just kind of whenever I just repeat it. That was my maintenance method. Entirely. As you may know, recently got diagnosed with prostate cancer. Just got surgery. Probably still going to need some other treatment. But from that and from just being at home, kind of got motivated to get back into exercise. And having been through other things like CrossFit, like functional training, that's a different thing. All these other things, I know, and I think Steve Maxwell probably came to the same conclusion, and other people too, that while I think HIIT has some deficiencies and I disagree with some things, it's still way above everything else.
Right.
It's still way above everything else. So whether or not I have my disagreements are going to be nitpicky, but not nitpicky enough to say, no, that's stupid.
It's interesting. One of the things I've heard Bryce Lee, I don't know if you know that name. Bryce Lee is a physiotherapist who also has a facility where he trains.
In Canada? I think in Canada?
No,
Or
Bryce
Australia?
Lee, no, he's in the United States, although I'm going to go blank as to his exact location.
Yeah, when you say physiotherapist, I think either Canada or
Well,
Australia.
he's technically a doctor of physiotherapy, but physiotherapists now are required to have PhDs in the United States. I don't know if that's true in Canada. And he explained that that's because they should be able to recognize, sometimes somebody will see them with a certain ailment that goes beyond musculoskeletal, and they should be able to recognize certain things and say, okay, you need to see an oncologist, or you need to see something else. So that's what it is. But he also has a facility. And one of the things I heard him in a podcast with Lawrence Neal. Lawrence Neal does a great podcast. And I think, and I'm paraphrasing Lawrence here, so forgive me, Lawrence, if you're listening to this, but he was basically asking how does Bryce sort of sell his clients on the idea that HIIT is, the best way to train. And again, paraphrasing loosely here, and Bryce's answer is, well, he said, I don't. I don't tell them that it's necessarily better. I tell them it's more efficient and it's safer.
Yeah.
It's the most efficient way, and he didn't claim that it was or it wasn't. He says, if you say it's the best, then you have to back that up.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard that on Dwayne's. Yeah.
And it's hard to do that and back that up. And although, I have issues with labels like HIIT. I like to think rational exercise. I don't know where I came up with that. I don't even like evidence-based because you can find evidence to support just about anything.
Same with science-based. Yeah.
Yeah, science-based, evidence-based. What does that even mean? But there are, HIIT in general. James Fisher, who is an exercise researcher from the United Kingdom.
I think I just listened to a podcast about him.
And one of the things he said, I'd rather be trained by the worst HIIT. If you're getting trained by the worst HIIT trainer, it's probably a safer workout than most other workouts you're going to have out there.
Yeah.
But you were saying HIIT is superior, some nitpicky things and whatnot. Now you had mentioned one of the things before we started recording about you felt your results when you trained when HIIT, because the vast majority, I think you said in a period of a couple of decades, if I'm not mistaken, or at least a decade, that with the exception of maybe a handful of times, you trained yourself.
Yeah.
And you feel that as a result of that, you did not get the results you could have had. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you meant by that?
Yes. Let me go and not detail, but kind of I do want to explain that quite well.
Context.
Number one, I'm going to say straight out, taking a set to momentary muscle failure is the most advanced HIIT technique that can be done. It is the most advanced. It is up there. With an instructor, that level is here. And most people think without an instructor, that level would be here, but it's not. It's on the floor. It's barely up. It's just a little above other workout types. The difference in that is huge. So the stimulation is not what people think. When I trained myself, I thought I was going to failure. I thought I was working hard. And this was probably the first 5 years of HIIT. And it was, straight Nautilus, straight. I had no one else around me. It's kind of like me learning Chinese right now. I don't know of any other Westerner doing that, at least in my immediate vicinity or nearby. Same with HIIT back when I first started. I was the only person in Atlanta, it felt like, maybe 3 others and Nautilus at Buckhead. But there weren't that many people who even knew about HIIT, much less a trainer. So I never, for the first 5 years, never got trained. And I'll say this, I think our clients, when I had clients, your clients too, probably are able to train, and able to is a key word, able to train harder than we ever could, at least back then.
Right.
I think they have been trained how to train hard, and that's a key point. Without proper instruction, there's no real way you can know how hard is hard.
Right.
So I was never actually training hard enough. And then when I actually got to Gainesville Health and Fitness for the first time and had someone else actually train me, it was devastating. It was like, and this is one of my nitpicky things I can get into more later. But I got to feel the difference of what a real high intensity workout felt like. And I was like, okay, I have not for 5 years done a high intensity workout. I've been going through the learning pattern. So it's, like I said, going to momentary muscle failure is the most advanced HIIT technique you can do. All the other things are ways to get around the fact that you couldn't get there.
So,
Pre-exhaustion. Go ahead.
so let me ask you to define something.
Okay.
Results. I often
Um,
hear people say, I got better results doing this than everything else.
yeah. Yeah.
So does that mean, because just to give some context to the question,
Mhm.
I think that with, very few exceptions where people are genetically gifted, most people's results doing any type of exercise
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
are compared to what you hear about, and when somebody are relatively, and don't get me wrong, the health benefits themselves are life changing. But as
Hmm.
far as getting really, really strong and getting really, really big muscles, well, I say a couple of reallys in there, but the type that where people will notice, where they'll go, oh, look at that guy, type
Yeah.
of thing, there are
Yeah.
much rarer. It's much harder for most people to do that than the
Hmm.
rest. So having said that, because the guy who's genetically blessed, he's going to get work. Arnold Schwarzenegger, to use an extreme example, practically could grow. Well, first of all, if you see pictures of an 18 or 19-year-old Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was already a big
All
bulk.
right. Yeah. 16. At 16, it was already big.
He was already a great big guy, right?
Yeah.
Probably he could have went to work on the farm, throwing bales of hay. He would have been big. But
Hmm.
for those of us, that I would describe myself as an ectomorph, more or less, maybe a little bit of mesomorph, and so what results did you get? How much better results do you think you could have gotten? That's probably an unfair question, but maybe just
No, it's not. No, it's not,
your
because
thought.
I actually was able to go through this. My competitive weight when I was a gymnast was between 139 and 149. Um,
At what height?
5'6", 5'5". After I quit and at 22 years old, I did grow an inch. That actually did happen. I grew an inch, maybe a little bit more than an inch. And my weight has kind of always been stable around 150, 155. And I now know that that is my most comfortable weight. That's the weight where I literally feel strong.
Right.
Uh, so when I first started training, I very quickly got up to 162 as far as results. The best I ever got was in Gainesville as far as size and strength. Strength about the same. As far as bigger muscles, body fat about the same, maybe leaner. The best I ever got was 168. And that was probably my leanest and most muscular, and maybe not most muscular, with high intensity training. That was the best results I got. When I stepped away from high intensity training, I went with I'm going to try extremes mindset. And the first extreme I tried is like, I wanted to chase down overtraining. I wanted to pursue it like prey. I wanted to feel what overtraining felt like. And another thing I'm going to do a podcast on the future. I think recovery and overtraining are way different. I have seen athletes in states of overtraining. I lived at the athlete dorm at University of Georgia in Athens. I saw track people, swimmers. We weren't with the football players. These were all the spring sports. But you could easily see what overtraining looked like. It looks like the flu. It's not pretty. And remember that thing Mike Mincer said? He's like, overtraining is not just a bad thing. It's a really bad thing. Um, yes, but I don't think there is any hit person who's overtrained. That is my subjective estimation, as not an objective because I can't measure it. So I have seen many of them. They are probably underslept, underhydrated, undernutrition, but not overtrained. And I can talk more about that another time.
Now, so let me just challenge
Mhm.
you, but that
Okay.
means so you can be based on your sleeping and all this, if you're not recovering from your workout, Yeah, okay, wait a second. Let me give that some thought. I hear you.
I was about,
Yeah,
but
because you
workout
turn,
versus training, workout
yeah,
versus training, two
yeah.
different things.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Workout, strength training. So like if you are only strength training, it is highly unlikely you can overtrain. You can be under recovered before your next workout, but overtraining, no, you're not anywhere near that. Um, if you are if you are under recovered, if you haven't not yet recovered, it will actually be difficult to lift the weights of the workout. If you can get fairly close to your last effort workout, you're not overtrained. You're not anywhere near it.
Right,
It's I like I said, I've seen the states of overtraining. This they have applied an athletic word, which is strange to me. Here's a group of people, hip people, who have an abhorrence for athletic terms, but embrace this one. I don't get that. It's like they don't like the term personal trainer, but overtraining is fine. Okay.
right.
So it's again, define in words. So let's use the correct words. Another example, momentary muscle failure. Oh, hold on a moment. How long is a moment? How long is a moment of momentary? How long is this moment in momentary muscle failure? Is it quick or is it long? I don't know. But these are questions that I always had. Not always, but over during my time of examining HIIT from the outside in. Was how do we quantify what these things are with these vague terms? Momentary is a vague term.
Right.
It's and muscle, like the guy James Fisher. He said, is the muscle failing or is the neurological system failing? Is it neuromuscular or is it the chemistry? Is it the brain or is it a neural inhibition? Is it a cognitive inhibition?
Right. Right.
So there could be, we don't know what is failing here. That is one of the issues I have about momentary muscle failure. We think we know, but I think it's going to be years before we can really look at that.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, what I tell clients um, is that your first adaptation is psychological.
Yes, yes.
Because when you first start, if you've not ever worked hard, and you get people, it's interesting, I find that the younger my clients, the more this is the case, maybe a reflection on today's society, if you will, is that they initially think, oh my God, this is the hardest thing I've ever done, because it may very well be the hardest thing they ever did. Because, when we were kids, we probably did things like I'll race you around the block.
Mm-hmm.
And a bunch of kids would run around the block as fast as they could. And so, we had done that as kids and some of these, but anyways, I'm on a tangent there.
No, you're not. That's not a tangent. I don't think it's a tangent at all. I think you're same thing.
So I say at first you go from, oh my God, this is hard, make it stop, to eventually you get into this, all right, bring it on, I can do this. And
Yes.
also cultivating stoicism, a certain degree of stoicism, because what accompanies great effort often when you're not used to it is anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And as people get anxious, they do that. And only then after that, there's neurological efficiency that steps in. And then bones and tendons and ligaments get stronger. And I think that the adaptation of last resort is actual muscle hypertrophy.
Yeah, yeah. Like Drew said, it is not. There is no survival advantage to over increasing muscle mass. It is a problem in nature, not a benefit. So there's this balance, and I kind of after a while, and I'll tell you this, when I went for my experiment of volume. Like I said, I chased down overtraining, and I don't think I ever got there. I never felt it. I was doing 2-a-days. I was doing tons of sets. I mean, ridiculous amounts of volume. I would get tired, but I kept making progress. My eventual weight at training that I did 12 weeks. I kind of did my own version of Body for Life. At the end of it, the last time I weighed, and I'll be honest about this, I ate a whole pizza and drank Diet Mountain Dew before I weighed myself. So there was some weight in there in my gut, 189. So that was, I was pretty big compared. You've heard that term, big and bulky. I wouldn't say I was bulky. I was bigger, noticeably bigger. But the thing I had is I felt heavy. I did not feel as strong as how heavy I felt.
You didn't feel nimble.
Yeah. That's the easiest way is I think had I stayed at that level of body weight, I would have adapted to it. But to do so would have been just not achievable. The amount of food I had to eat, it was just uncomfortable. I was always, go ahead.
Have you read the article by Skylar Tanner called I forget if it's a 6-year itch or the 7-year itch?
I have not. I need to.
So it's interesting. Skylar talks about everything he's done over the years to gain weight. He's talked about how he's tried all these different things and got up to 240 and lifted big heavy weights and sort of what you're describing, where he was big and bulky, but he was fat. And and then he goes on to, he uses a number of examples. He's updated this article, and he talks about Josh Trentini and the amount of muscle that Josh, as a natural bodybuilder, has put on over the years. There's another fellow whose name escapes me, but this guy, maybe somebody's surpassed him now, but for the longest time was considered the greatest natural bodybuilder ever. And how much muscle those guys put on. So technically, the guy who's most genetically blessed as naturals, right? Because who knows about the other guys? And the rate of muscle gain over the time was like a pound a year, if that, half a pound a year, things like that. And of course, the one guy, Josh Trentini, is a super slow guy. And this other guy was a high volume guy, but at the end of the day, didn't seem to make that. And one experiment, one time I wasn't chasing overtraining, but when I first started exercising, I read Kenneth Cooper's Aerobics, and it was like more is better. So at one point, I would jog to the pool to swim laps all day, swim laps for an hour, and then jog home. And I was playing hockey 2 or 3 times a week. And then I was also going to the gym and lifting weights. This is when I eventually read the Nautilus bodybuilding book and sort of, and I was getting in great shape. Now, I don't know how long that would have kept up before I would have started getting injured. But even more recently, I don't know, it must be about 3 years ago now, 4 years ago, I did an experiment where I did leg presses every day for 20 days in a row.
What was the result?
I kept lifting a little more weight every day.
Yeah.
Which traditional hip thing would have said that, the second day I wouldn't have lifted as much as the first day because I wasn't as recovered. I wasn't fully recovered. And the third day I would have lifted less. And the fourth day, if you look at the hip literature, it would have said that every day I should have been lifting less and less as I did the deeper inroad.
Or at least towards the end of those days. I experienced the same thing. Do you remember the Big Arms book? Darden's Big Arms book?
Yeah.
I tried a thing where I did, at the end of my volume experiment for the last 2 weeks, because I was so wanting to get a 16-inch arm. The biggest my arm got was 15 and 15/16. I was 1/16 of an inch away from it. But I was literally doing 2 sets on multi-bicep and multi-tricep every day.
Well, and I also had a bioimpedance, the in-body tool. So I got stronger, but I wasn't putting on any muscle.
Yeah. So we were having other adaptations, who knows what.
Yeah, and whatnot. And I'm sure if I would have continued to do that, I would eventually reached a state of overtraining, or my knees would have started to rebel or things would have happened, but
I,
it was
I
an
think
experiment.
I think before all those other things happen, I think your body will initiate an inhibitor, some sort of neural inhibitor that will prevent you from hurting yourself. When you go out for a run, because you're in constant motion, that inhibition is dampened. It's not,
Right.
it doesn't work as well. But when you're in a machine where you can just stop or chin up or whatever, you're more inclined to just stop and, okay, that's enough of that.
Well, and yeah, when I ran, I mean, one point I got a cramp in my calf when I used to jog. I'm going by, I haven't jogged since the 80s, probably 83. But
Hmm.
now, on occasion, I have gone on a fun run.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
curious to just, fundraisers for charities and things. I thought, oh, let's see if I can still run a 10K and how it goes. I can predict right around the third or fourth kilometer, my calf cramps up on me.
yeah, yeah.
And so, obviously I did some sort of damage there that has remained a weak link. Because at one point, the most I ever ran was 8 miles in a row. But sure enough, my hip started to feel weird, my knees started to feel weird. And I realized if I'd have stuck with jogging to this day, I'd, probably be seeing an orthopedic surgeon or would have seen an orthopedic surgeon by now to fix my knees. So now, um, you watched the podcast I did with Dwayne Wimmer,
Yeah, I just finished it just right before we got on. Yeah.
and I believe you were alluding when you said, I agree with what he said about the right or wrong way. So Dwayne, if you're listening to this, I'm paraphrasing. So if I paraphrase, the mistake's mine, not yours. That, as long as you're not hurting yourself, that people, especially in our community, can get nitpicky
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
things. As long as you're not hurting yourself and you're progressing over time, right? Even though he said he rarely lifts the weights, and even though, 3 seconds, 3 to 4 seconds up, 3 to 4 seconds down by super slow methodology would be considered too fast.
It's a little fast for me, even. Yeah.
But he continues to say he keeps getting his clients to feel it more, to have more of a specific feel for the muscle and get better at it, which is what John Parr said too, even though he uses 10 seconds. So I'm
Hmm.
thinking they're both talking about better form, better feel, everything else with very different speeds. And I would have no problem recommending somebody who told me they're going to be living in the area where these two gentlemen work and recommending either one.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I think they would get great results. So is that what you were referring to when you said I agree with his, the right or wrong way? And
Mostly, I think an easier way to think about it is kind of what Drew said in one of the videos about diet. There is ideal and then there is practical. There is what, ideal, like you said, with the training with Ken's over your shoulder, that is ideal. That's what you want to strive for. But then you have practical application. What can be done? What can be accomplished with this person if you're a trainer? What will they do? Like some people they're too discouraged to go to failure. I've mentioned in one of the posts that one of the big reasons there is not so much so not so many hit articles or research is from my overhearing them talking about it. That group, when they put those kind of research together, the hit group or the one set to failure, they have a huge drop off rate. They have a lot of people quit the research. They just won't finish, and they can't sometimes complete a research if they don't have the groups in the initial pilot study. So if the pilot study doesn't go over, they just dump that group and continue with the study. So that's part of what's going on. You have a huge drop off rate with hit. And that was something that was of a concern to me, that we were missing benefiting more people. And how I'm trying to get my light to here to beat a little bit less. How can we benefit more people with correct exercise? And like the things I think that HIT gets right are obviously function dictates design of both the equipment, of the exercise prescription, minimal training. Some people want more. That's if they want to do that. I don't get it, but some people do. They get more right than the wrong. The problem is the things that are ultimately right are sometimes not tolerable for people.
Right.
And that's, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, I think what Dwayne was saying, that some of my clients are simply not willing to work certain hard, so I get them to come an extra time a week.
Yeah, yeah.
And I make up for maybe the intensity is a little lower, so you do a little more volume, a little more frequency.
Yeah, yeah. I would put up a little more volume in the workout before the frequency, to be honest. That's my opinion. My speculation is that us we hit before, like when I was there, we would have this either or thing about volume. It's either absolute minimalist volume or train all the time volume. And sometimes just a little more volume is all that's needed. We try to think that things like pre-exhaustion is not volume. Like on the multi-bicep, we used to finish it. We used to put the bar in and then do infometric and akinetic and what was the other one? Duo poly, where you went like this, and
Right.
all the different things we would add on. And same thing on the duo squat. You finish your set and all right, put the infometric bar and let's deeper inroad. No. It's just more volume. It's just a different version of it. And sometimes it would probably be safer just to go back and do a second set, especially for older people.
Well, and that those terms, volume, to me, it's almost like an endless loop sort of argument that people make about this three sets versus one set and things like that, because somebody's doing a 1 second up, 1 second down, and they do 3 sets of 10.
Mm-hmm.
If you do the math, that comes up to 60 seconds.
And it's under what we do. It's
That's
still,
right.
Yeah, we used to, at Games Health and Fitness, when I worked there, we would go and watch some specific people who were doing traditional style workouts. And we would clock their time from the moment they started a repetition to the moment they end it. And if you add it all up, it's very much the same, if not slightly under a normal HIIT workout. So your time actual under load. Now they're doing more repetitions. They're doing more concentric contractions. That's a little different.
Right.
So that was one of the things that was peculiar to me, is like these people claim to be in here an hour, but they're under the same load.
Yeah, and they're just spending more time at the water fountain and chatting with their friends.
Yeah.
But interesting, one thing's, and I don't know how long ago it is that you've read the articles that you wrote about the MedX testing, but I particularly enjoyed your assessment of exercise research in general. And then maybe that's confirmation bias, because you like articles that say what you already agree with.
Yeah.
And but the degree to which most exercise research and research in general, and that made me think when you talked about when you went to school and you did the engineering and stuff like that. I find that exercise research, I read it, I listen to people discuss it, and I just kind of shake my head and they say the terms aren't defined.
Yeah. You get and if you tried to take exercise research to an engineering research place, they would probably take about 20 seconds to just hand it back to you, get out of my office.
Yeah.
Engineering research would not put up with that business. No.
Yeah, I mean, I was just listening to a podcast this morning. We were talking about 30 to 80% of your 1 rep max, is what you should use. And that's a big discovery, that it doesn't have to be heavy and whatever. Having said that, if you go with the lower range, you're going to have more endurance. If you go with the higher range, you're going to have more strength. But nobody's defining what's the definition of endurance? What's the definition of strength? From the point of view of demonstrating something, sure, if you practice doing bench presses with heavier weights, you're probably going to get better at doing, 1 rep maxes or 2 rep max 3, because you're you're practicing
Yes.
using heavier weights, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I just sort of, but I mean, there was other parts of this podcast that I thought were valuable, but I sort of take some of it with grains of salt, especially when he says all the recent research seems to point to, and I'm thinking all the recent research that's like really badly done.
Yeah.
I still think most of what we know.
I couldn't find it with a grain of salt in your Apple Music
Sorry, my
library.
Siri.
You can ask me to play a radio station.
Okay.
Ask for your music on a different app.
Siri, stop. Siri talking to her. Stop, Siri. Can't say her name. So, anyways, I mean, you know, interesting. Doug McGuff and I did a podcast, and he brought up a point about the scientific method, and we talked about Arthur Jones. Arthur Jones, you know, didn't come up with most of his principles through scientific research. It was kind of intuitive. Here's a guy with a grade 9 education. And Doug said many things, even in engineering, I suspect, you may correct me, come from what Doug called tinkerers.
Yes, yes. Maker, like, you remember that, you know, there's the strong movement of makers.
No, tell me.
Okay, yeah, just look up maker. You know, just do a Google. It's these people, tinkerers. These are the people who have, you know, immense amounts of 3D printing things, of laser cutting things, and they'll devise and invent things, or rejigger things, or fix things differently, or improve. You know, kind of a modern version of what we used to do, our grandfathers used to do on a workbench.
Right.
Yeah. So a maker is makers are what they're called. And it's interesting to watch them and what they do and how they evaluate everything. And I would say that's probably their mindset is probably a lot closer to HIT, Nautilus type thinking.
Well, Craftsman, there's a great book called
I think I know what Shop Class as Soulcraft.
Class as Soulcraft, yes.
Yes, that is an awesome book. I think we both just gave a recommendation.
and interestingly, you know, if you think about it, you know, craftsmen back in the day were doing things. It wasn't in a lab. It was a guy sitting down with his tools, and he was crafting things. And he
where this came from.
Yeah, probably the guy had never been to university and whatnot. So it's interesting. There's another guy, Nicholas Nassim Taleb. Do you know him?
Have not heard that.
He wrote The Black Swan and Fooled by Randomness and things like that.
Okay, yeah, I know those. Yeah,
he makes the point that, my words, not his, tinkerers come up with stuff, and then scientists come up after the fact and explain why it works.
Yeah.
And
I think,
and sometimes then they claim they came up with it in the first place.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot now with exercise research. If you look at more and more of it is closer towards what Arthur was doing in the 70s.
Right.
So, you know, so that's a good thing. I still have, you know, differing opinions about Arthur. In my mind, Arthur was a showman, developed a cult of personality, whereas Ken is a scientist and an engineer. And Arthur was about Arthur. Ken is about the exercise. Ken is about the science. That's why I really like Ken.
Yeah.
Or especially how he approaches exercise. And it's not about Ken, it's about the exercise.
Well, and you're right. I would agree. You know, if you've ever taken social styles, and so Arthur would have been a driver, an expressive driver, and Ken would have been an analytical driver, because I still think he's a driver, but he's an analytical. Neither of them were amiable. Right?
I think that was part of what made them appealing.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's right. But Arthur was a much better salesman.
He was a better showman. He was a P.T. Barnum.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a showman, which I agree with Edgar that he was not a good salesman, because he often crushed his own sales by calling his clients idiots.
Well, yeah, but yeah, he created, but he created, I mean, that the Nautilus
Yeah,
phenomenon was quite a amazing thing. And part of that, like you say, was part of their appeal. And to this day, sometimes it appeals to me that his legacy, to some extent, is that hit people are abrasive when they don't need to be. Like
yeah,
calling people idiots
yes,
who
yes, I completely
who
agree with
don't
that.
agree with them and saying this or that is nonsense, as opposed to saying, well, I think you're doing, you're exercising, that's good. And you're doing resistance training, that's good. And somebody's going to jump up and say, well, exercise is this and it's not that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're attempting to get in better shape. That's good, and let's give people credit for the things that they're doing right, and then say, however, have you considered that maybe this might be more efficient? It might be safer. You might have more converts than if you just said, well, what you're doing is absolute nonsense, and you're an idiot.
You may be able to get people around who are listening to listen to you because they think like you if you call another person an idiot. And I think that was what Arthur was trying to do, is he was trying to garner the other people. But the problem is the idiot was the one who had the money to buy his equipment.
Right. Well, you probably know the story that Ellington Darden was essentially, in my opinion, Ellington Darden, I respect Ellington for a lot of the things he did. He was a good writer, but he was basically a buffer.
Oh, yes. Yes. And Jim Flanagan. And Jim Flanagan.
Yeah, he was a buffer between Arthur and other people, because Arthur was not above, from what I've heard. You've met the man, right?
Oh yeah, quite a few times. Like I said, I probably had a total of 5 minutes of actual discourse with him, but I was around him frequently enough to get how he is.
From what I hear, he was not above going from calling you an idiot to actually threatening to kill you, depending on the circumstance.
And then getting everybody dinner. He would do that. It was weird, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, certainly, I guess, obviously, a genius type of thing. So today, where do you see now for yourself? You're getting back in exercise. You talked about maybe becoming recertified. So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, you were a master Superslow instructor. Now, for people who have never heard of that, because I remember you could become certified level 1. And at level 2, you were a master, and not all masters could also certify others.
Correct.
Now, were you at that level? Did you certify other people at some point?
I never actually participated as alone in doing that. I assisted Ken.
Okay.
I didn't go out and do that. Drew did that, and some of the other masters in other locations. But because I was at the same place Ken was, they're going to want to be certified by Ken. So
Right.
I would assist with that. I took the test and did all the stuff. Most of my, I guess, my appointment, I would call more of an honorary appointment. You can ask Ken. I don't know what he would say. But because I was working with him, around him all the time, and he was always, like, do this, don't do this. I was getting the benefit of all that information, and I took the test, did well. I was taking the test while we were coming up with a test.
Right.
And I would, it's like he was like, try this one, and then try this one. So I don't even remember my scores. He may have them. I would be interested to know. But a master was an appointed position, not there was no test for it. It was an appointment. And I would say that mine was more of an honorary appointment, not an intended.
There was a practical as well to become certified even at level 1. So
Yes.
Ken would watch you put somebody else through a workout. Is that
the first one I remember, the first one I was there when he did the first one with Doug Spratt. Doug Spratt was the first certified trainer, level 1 trainer. And Doug's, if there had been a level 4 or 5, he should have acquired it that day. That was a pretty much an 8-hour onslaught of just, but yeah, Doug should have been a master.
Okay.
That first one was really a lot. I don't really, it was so long ago, I don't really remember all the details. But I remember there were key things that you had to get or you did not get the certification.
Right.
And the whole point, and the reason I wanted to go back to this is, I mean, back to exercise and Superslow, of all the certifications, of all the techniques, of all the things I've witnessed and seen and tried, what Ken achieved is the absolute best. There is nothing else that compares to that level of instruction. And that level of instruction is the only thing that is going to get someone to momentary muscle failure, if that's the goal.
Right.
I honestly, and I will say this straight out, I honestly don't think you can get there without that level of instruction. I don't think it can be done by yourself. You may be able to have a workout partner who is really knowledgeable about HIIT and get you there, but without someone who knows what they're doing, it's not possible. That's opinion, my speculation.
What about desirable? How desirable is it to get to that level of?
That's a different topic. That's a different topic, completely different. I'm gonna say, like I said, momentary muscle failure is the most advanced technique you can do. It is the absolute top level. Everything else is under it, and everything else is a workaround if you couldn't get there. I don't know how actually productive it is. I suspect that maybe it might be productive 1 or 2 exercises a week to failure. To be honest, I'll back up a little bit. You know the story that Drew gives about when he was in Wisconsin, with Mike Moran and training somebody, and Mike or him, I forget who, trained the redhead guy. And the guy was like, he was a bodybuilder or bodybuilder wannabe. They trained him and the guy was floored. He was, in the bathroom for vomiting for an hour, sitting, waiting for, you've heard this story. Yeah. Steve Maxwell, when he went to his first, time, they, trashed him. He was on the ground. Same thing with me, my interview workout at Gainesville Health and Fitness. These were examples of shock, not intensity. These were examples of people being induced into shock.
Right.
And it's, if you don't work up to it, you're going to have a reaction. It may not have been full all-out shock. It was at least borderline shock. So I think a lot of times when people are talking about recovery, they're not talking about muscular recovery. They're talking about recovery from shock. And I'm not talking about CNS burnout or central nervous system burnout. That's a different subject. That is a long-term, that's closer related to true overtraining, athletic overtraining. But the inducement of shock is a systemic thing in your whole body. So I think those examples that we give, that would take you weeks to recover from.
Right. Well, Arthur Jones, and I believe, again, I'm paraphrasing, has stated that failure was not a requirement, but that it was impossible to measure almost failure. Yes, yeah. And that's the tough part. James Steele, and I think maybe James Fisher, they did some research where they tried to get people to estimate 1 or 2 reps short of failure. What is that called? The reps in the tank, or reps in reserve? Reps in reserve. Something like that. And then of course somehow or other they would get them to do it again and actually go to failure, and found that people were notoriously inaccurate in their estimate of what they could do. And you've trained people. I found that sometimes people say, "Oh, I can't do anymore," and you just gently say, "Well, just keep trying. Just keep trying and let's see what happens. Don't worry about making the rep. Just keep trying. As long as it's moving, keep it moving." And 3 reps later, they still can do it. So I think at least if they're trying. But the other thing I do sometimes is I know certain people don't go to failure.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they don't want to, and I think I would lose them as clients if I pushed them to go beyond. But I keep adding a little weight. And so over time, and these are people in their 60s, in some cases in their 70s, and if they continually are adding just a little bit of weight, and sometimes I'll increase as little as a quarter pound, but they keep doing a little more, a little more, a little more. Is it optimal? Maybe not. But they're going in the right
Optimal
direction.
for them. Yeah.
It's optimal for them. Fred Hahn, you would know Fred Hahn too.
Yeah.
So, who at one time was the president of the guild, and then later on he wasn't. I guess there's probably a story there, maybe for another day. But I heard a story where he said to a client, he said, I can't do any more. And he said, give me 3 more reps and I'll give you 5 free sessions. And the guy did 3 more reps. And then the guy says, so I get the free sessions? He said, no. He said, well, you lied to me. He says, so did you.
I like that. I gotta remember about that, Fred.
So it's interesting. And also,
it sounds like Fred too.
and there's different people have different tolerances for effort, pain, whatever you want to call it. Right? You hear about the alpha subjects and things like that, and people are able to train. Have you ever seen YouTube videos of Al Coleman training? Al Coleman, trains with incredible intensity while being completely stoic in the process and things like that. And I reach a point where I'll start a rep and I know I'm not going to finish it, not in good form. And I'll push for 2-3 seconds, but I never do. I shouldn't say never. I might occasionally do 7-8 seconds, but really continue to push and push. I don't think it's going to make a whole lot, especially not after 40 years of training.
Yeah. I will do that. I hate to use this word. If the mood strikes me, or if I feel like I'm exceptionally strong today, that this is, I need to do this today, I'll do it. If I do, I will usually avoid doing failure on the rest of the workout. I'll finish the workout, but I'll back off just a little bit. Because I know the reaction that an actual true set to failure will have on my body. And it's, when I do that, I know I'm going to have almost a week to recover.
Well, would you say too that it's important? I mean, Ken has designed some great equipment. He has come up with the correct versions of equipment design. Yes. Yeah, and as a result of that, if I'm failing on a MedX machine, I'm really failing. Whereas if I'm failing on a lot of other machines, I'm hitting the sticking point. Yes.
Yeah. The random failure point was always Ken's goal in designing resistance curves. I don't know if that's still necessary. I imagine it would be. I don't know how we could. I mean, there's I've seen some. I haven't actually been on the MedX machines, but I've seen they had adjustable cams, and I know he had some of the TSC equipment. And I would like to see that someday, but I haven't got to be on those. So what you've got a YouTube channel, and you're exploring various things. So what would you like to accomplish in the next 6 months to a year? Okay, I do have a goal for a year. For me, the time static contraction is a huge new thing. It feels like, let me fix my camera. It feels like when I first got the Nautilus book, or the Nautilus bodybuilding book. So I'm having fun and a good time learning and exploring with that. Right now in the mornings, the setup you see right here, this is how I teach English to people in China in the morning time. Right. I don't teach, I coach by helping them practice. Most people in China can already speak English. They just need to practice, and they will pay anyone who can speak English as a native speaker. They will pay them to practice. So that's, yeah, that's something that people should think about. I do that sometimes 7 days a week, usually, but it's usually an hour or two in the morning, and then I'll do other stuff. But my goal is I want to be able to teach online time static contraction training to people in China in Chinese.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a tough goal. It's a tough goal. So I got a lot of vocabulary to learn, a lot of scripts to say, but also a lot to. I don't. This is a new thing for me. I'm approaching time static contractions, just like I did when I first started learning Nautilus. Okay, this is new. I'm going to go it as though I know nothing about exercise. I know nothing about fitness. And I'm going to learn from people who've already done it. I could come in here with a big head. Oh, I'm, Mr. Superslow Exercise Guild, former master. I know what I'm talking about. No, this is all new information to me. So
Cool.
I'm having a lot of fun learning it, and playing with it and trying it, and making a lot of mistakes, and then asking people on the forums, how do you do this? What do you do with this?
I liked your forklift straps rotator cuff with the horn. I have the horn and I have the rotator one, so I was thinking about that one.
It's interesting. I've used the shoulder horn for a while, and that position, the position that Drew recommends, it would be better. But I have a separated shoulder, almost third degree separated shoulder. I am the only person I know who has re-injured an old injury his first time trying out curling. It's.
Well, curling is in biceps curls.
No. Curling. There's a
on the ice.
Yes.
Oh,
it was so funny because we have a Orlando Curling Club down here at the RDV, or at where they got the ice place.
See, I thought I was making a Canadian mistake. I had no idea that people in Florida are going.
Oh, you would not believe this. There is a sports bar over here, down the street from me, where when I'm doing DoorDash, I'll pick up from sometimes Gators Dockside. When I went by there to pick something up, I was like, it was right after the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, and I was like, oh, it's so bad. There's no curling on. And three of the guys who are waiting, up there drinking, they were like, oh, you should have been here during the Olympics. Every screen was on curling, and everybody was watching, and everybody's also going, how does this work? What are they doing?
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
So I went to go figure it out. And of course, in the first hour, I slipped on the ice and landed like that and re-injured it. But so one of the reasons I don't go to failure on pushing motions is as my muscles fatigue, the shoulder becomes unstable. It doesn't hurt. It just, I can feel it starting to become unstable.
Right.
So 2 sets is my workaround.
Right. Cool. So there's more than one way to do.
Yeah.
We started a little late, and I have to get ready for a couple of new clients, but I hope you give me the opportunity to do this again.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because I'll keep watching your videos. I think you do some very interesting, for lack of a better word, thought experiments.
Yes. Yeah. I have two more thought experiments I'm working on.
And I sort of thought about some way of periodically testing my clients to show them a reinforcing way of that they're making progress. But I'm toying with the idea of because I'm not going to get them to do a 1 rep max or even a 3 rep max or things like that. So of course I can tell them, it could be simply a matter of sharing with them how much they're lifting, but I have to be careful with that, because sometimes they can be making progress without actually lifting more because they're getting better at inroading.
Yeah, that's true. One of the things I used to do was I would surprise them occasionally by and I would pretend it was an accident. I would put in the weight that I started them on when they first started training. All right, let's go. And they're like, oh, this is too easy. I'm like, oh yeah, that was your starting weight. Sorry. and put it on the regular weight.
There you go. You
And they're like,
gave me an idea.
yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
so-
I'm going to sign off for now, and I will
Okay.
send me an email with a bio, any links to your YouTube channel, things like that, and
Okay.
I'll be sure to include all that.
All right. I appreciate it.
Great chatting, and I look forward to doing it again, and either formally like this or just on social media and on Drew's site and whatnot.
All right.
Bye bye now.
All right. Bye.